Welcome back to the channel. I hope you all are doing well. In today's episode, we will be taking a look at the cringiest moments people have experienced that still haunt them to this day. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I went camping with some friends once and we ate some shrooms. At one point I had to go to the bathroom, so I went to find the bathroom on the campground, did my business, and went back to our campsite. I grabbed a beer from the cooler and it was Bud Light, and I thought that was weird because I don't drink Bud Light and neither do any of my friends, but I just wanted something cold in my mouth, so I didn't care. I sat down at the fire and started drinking my beer, and I realized everybody had gone quiet and was staring at me. First I was like, why aren't you guys talking? Did I fart? Then why are you staring at me like that? Then it clicked, oh my god, you're not my friends, where am I? I went to the wrong campsite and just plopped my tripping ass down at the fire with a family of 4, a husband and wife and 2 kids. They just looked horrified. I'll never forget the look on their faces. This was years ago, so maybe the kids are on Reddit now. If so and you're reading this, I'm sorry for ruining your camping trip. When I was in high school, I was sitting with my ex-girlfriend before class started. I was building a motorcycle in auto shop and brought a large chrome-plated castle nut to school with me to finish attaching the wheel to the frame. Well, we were goofing around and I thought it would be cute if I slid the lug nut onto her ring finger. Then after the novelty wore off, it quickly dawned upon me that this motherfucker won't slide off. The threads of the nut were tearing her skin every time we pulled, like a sadistic Chinese finger trap. So first I went to my shop teacher and we tried to use motor oil to get it off, a painful and unfruitful venture which only led to me being insulted by my favorite teacher. So I had to go with her to the principal's office and explain what happened, and then she went to the hospital. I went with and watched as the fire department cut this super hard lug nut off her hand while all the firefighters laughed and insulted me. The nut kept heating up and burning the skin because metal gets very hot when being cut, so this lasted quite a while. Well, let's see. When I was in middle school I had just started getting my period. Unfortunately, at the time, I didn't know that I had very heavy and long periods, which would later cause me to get anemia. One day before I go to school my period comes and I have absolutely no pads. Tampons scared the shit out of me at the time. So, my dumbass middle school self decides to just stuff some TP in my underwear to line it and I should be fine. Yeah, well, I was wrong. Not even the first class passes and I'm leaking. Bad. Oblivious me doesn't really realize this until I get up from my seat and see a giant red stain. I ran out of that classroom so fast and called my mom to come pick me up. Cried for about the rest of the day as my mom tried to console me. Ugh, even thinking of it now sucks. I was in community college at the time and 2 of my friends and I were starring in a student-run production of the complete works of William Shakespeare, abridged, awesome show. You can find the whole original cast production on YouTube. The whole show is 3 goofy guys acting out all the parts in every one of Shakespeare's works, so Therese a lot of running around and instant costume changes. Our core costume was velvet shorts, puffy shirts, purple stockings, and Chuck Taylors. We had been doing a lot of dress rehearsals to get used to costume changes and our budget was low, so we had opted for the cheap stockings which began to fray at the crotch. About a week before our first show we decided to do a little promo show on the sidewalk in a big downtown open-air mall to get people interested. The show was going great. There was a decent crowd around and we had just finished the bit where we rapped Othello, the Moor of Venice, when I see them in the very front. 2 college-age girls are leaning in towards on another and whispering and smiling and pointing at my crotch. I looked down and realized that the end of my cock had been out of the front of my shorts for God knows how long. All the animated movement and the bad pantyhose and the loose fly of the shorts had come together to create the perfect storm. I swiftly grabbed a kilt and wrapped it around myself and shuffled away once we took our bow. I made sure to take a needle and thread to those fucking shorts when we got back. My face was so red. Dear God. There were children there. When I was about 12 my dad had a client over for dinner. Halfway through dinner I felt an apocalyptic thunderpoo trundling towards freedom, so I urgently excused myself and ran upstairs to the toilet. Our bathroom was at the top of our stairs, and the toilet faced the door, which I'd left open in my haste. I still don't know why I did this, but once everything was clear down below I decided to sit back down on the toilet and helicopter my wiener. I'd only recently worked that I could do this, and I guess I fancied doing that instead of heading back down to dinner. Needless to say, I suddenly think I hear footsteps coming up the stairs. My first instinct is to mash my junk back into my pants and act like I was washing my hands, but I didn't get that far because my scumbag brain thought it would better to try and close the door instead. During that moment of indecision, the shining top of this client's bald head came into view. It all happened in slow motion, the sound of his imminent arrival, my indecision about how to cover whatever the fuck I was doing, his head emerging from the edge of the staircase, and him staring directly at my still rotating penis. He just stopped for a second and turned around. I didn't look at him for the rest of the dinner. Oh God. This question strikes home. When I was in my final grade of the elementary school, ~12 I got overly self-aware of the fact that my penis leaks, i.e. piss droplets in boxers due to not shaking enough. So I figured one summer day that the thing that my mother kept next to the toilet must be to prevent this. So the brilliant 12-year-me took a menstrual pad and put it in my boxers, happy that my problem has been solved. Later that day I was in a hurry to catch a bus, so I ran, getting pretty sweated during this. But, lucky me, I caught the bus and even found in the front row my math teacher and her daughter, which was in my class. Also, I happened to have a crush on her, which doesn't help this story at all. I paid the driver for the ride and said hello while passing them. But I couldn't shake the feeling that they were looking at me somewhat weird. I was walking to my seat when I heard the voice of an old lady who stood behind me in line. "Young man, I believe you have dropped something." I turn around. Everyone, including driver, my teacher, my crush and the old lady who was in the line behind me were staring at me. I was mortified when I saw the reason. The menstrual pad has slipped from my sweaty boxers, through my shorts and lied in the middle of the passage in its sweaty, crumpled, peed glory. So yeah. The rest of the school year didn't go well. Neither did my love interest with the crush. I had no idea back then that you are supposed to use a sticker to make the menstrual pad stay in your pants. So, I guess, that's one lesson learned. And yes, I'm male. I had an oral examination board when I was in the Navy during which I just completely froze up and forgot almost everything I knew about what I was getting examined on. I could barely get a coherent string of words out. 3 hours of me just sitting there like an arse whilst my captain and 2 more of my superior officers just asked me questions I couldn't answer whilst looking at me like I was the stupidest man alive. It was excruciating, the most spectacular failure of my whole life. I'd spent months preparing and it just looked like I'd done no work for it at all. Suffice to say, my performance was so bad I got carpeted and did not get a second chance. No idea what happened to me, I could answer most of the questions now, no sweat. I ended up leaving the Navy very soon after that. That was about 6 years ago. I couldn't care less about not being in the Navy anymore, it was the right choice for me and I'm more than happy with what I do now, but hoo boy, just thinking about that interview is enough to make my skin crawl. I went to visit my grandparents in Delaware when I was 15 and my grandmother drove me out to Jolly Rogers amusement park. She didn't go on many of the rides so I was always going up in line alone. I was last in line for the bumper cars and of course there were no more cars left when I got to the front. I watched people have fun for 5 minutes and as I waited, nobody else got in line behind me. Their fun ended and it was finally my turn. The operators let me get in a car and switch the ride on. I was hoping at least one of them would ride around, too, but no. They just watched me sit there. So, I started driving in circles and ramming empty cars. As this was going on, a line started building up again. I saw those people and sat there again for a bit, looking from the line to the people in charge of the ride. Nothing. I continued to drive in circles for the longest 5 minutes of my life as the line got longer and longer. My timer ends and the cars shut off. I'm sat there thinking I get another go since that was pretty stupid of them. Nope, they came up to me asking for more tickets. Of course I had none left and had the saddest, loneliest walk off of one of my, previously, favorite amusement park attractions. Being offered a blow job by a hefty male customer while on the job, I'm a straight male. My previous job a couple years back was to go to customers' homes and assess their homes for energy efficiency. This one particular customer was welcoming at first, striked up conversation as most people do, nothing alarming. Then he started to get more personal with his conversation topics. Asking me where I was from, how old I was, mentioned how I reminded him of another fine young man that came to his house another time. Things went from bad to worse when I sat down to do paperwork. He sat beside me, still forcing small talk, and put his hand on my shoulder/back and gently rubbed it. At this point I'm freaking out and hurrying through this audit trying to get his paperwork printed and signed so I could go. I powered through it, and finally got everything printed. I asked for his signature, he signed, and then comes the question, "Is there anything else I can do for you?" Accompanied by a wink and a smile. Total discomfort struck. I knew exactly what he meant. I politely declined, told him I don't swing that way, and I really need to get on my way. He insisted at first, but finally apologized and I backed out of the door as swiftly as I could. To this day whenever I drive by that road he lives on, think back to that moment, and cringe. I feel bad for any other male professionals that must visit his home. I'm sure I wasn't the only one that had to experience this man's direct behavior. When I was in first grade, we used to have square dance lessons. This is in like 1981, in Kansas. Don't judge me. Anyways, the teacher used to pick a random person to allow them to choose whatever partner they wanted from the class. I had a massive crush on this girl named Ashley, and this particular time, the teacher picked me as the first person to pick a partner. I was finally going to be able to dance with Ashley. I was pumped. As I began to look at the girl standing across the room, I made eye contact with Ashley. She was staring at me too. Unfortunately, she was staring at me so that she could make direct eye contact and mouth out the word no while shaking her head no as well. I was already walking toward her and started saying her name by the time I realized she wanted nothing to do with me. At this point, I am standing in the middle of the floor by myself, having said the word Ashel. And the rest of the girls, about 25 of them, start to do the same thing she was doing, shaking their heads no. Literally no one wanted me to choose them. So instead of choosing, I told the teacher someone else could pick first. When she insisted I pick first, I picked the ugliest girl there so that no one else there would have to dance with me. So that sucked. One Saturday night 3.5 years ago, I went out to play cards with some friends. I was pretty tired, and after only about an hour or so I decided to call it quits and go home. When I got home, I noticed the car of one of my wife's coworkers was in the driveway. You can already see where this is going. Walk in, no one was in the living room but 2 empty wine glasses. Walk to the back of the house to the bedroom, which the door was closed but not locked, and open it up to see. Well, you pretty much know what. I divorced her 3 years ago. I'm single and I live alone now, but I still get a tinge of anxiety whenever I come home from a night out as I approach the door to my apartment. It sucks, but I can feel my heartbeat in my neck as I unlock the door. It passes after a few seconds after I get a grip. I wish myself or no man to ever experience this in person. A couple of years ago I was really depressed and I ate my feelings often, so one day I went to the grocery store at, which I didn't know at the time, prime time rush hour for families coming home from work. Anyways, I filled up a basket with a bunch of bread and donuts and ice cream and candy and stuff. I felt really embarrassed about all the stuff I got, so I talked on my phone and made it look like I was bringing home stuff for a bunch of other people. When I get to the checkout line and a lady behind me is staring at me like I'm disgusting with all the shit I'm buying. So I very loudly talk into my phone about why I have all this food, and I start putting my stuff on the conveyor belt and my phone rings, like really loudly while I'm supposedly talking into it. The cashier started laughing. Everyone in line behind me started laughing. The bag boy asked if my friends would prefer paper or plastic. I turned really red and almost started crying, and then just paid for my food and left. Probably the worst moment of my life so far. I work in medicine and I have to give patients injections. No problem, I've given injections hundreds of times. This one time I was giving a vitamin B12 injection which goes in the upper deltoid. I prepared the shot, checked muscle, cleaned the area, and I like to just go in fast so the patient doesn't even realize it is happening, which they usually mention that they didn't realize I started. This particular time I didn't really account for how thin my patient was and the fact that the needle, which is normally 3/8 of an inch, was 1 inch long. I poked him and it went so deep into his skinny arm I am absolutely positive I hit his bone. I felt the tip hit something hard and abruptly stop. I could almost feel the end of the needle bending against the solid mass. I cringed and looked at the patient, but apparently he didn't notice. I pulled out a bit and finished the injection. I could feel his bone for a full 3 weeks afterwards and can still recall it vividly. I always make sure to use shorter needles on thin people now. I went away on a school trip with a bunch of people to participate in an art competition. It was a week long, and I looked forward to it quite a bit. I need to preface this story with the fact that I'm someone who rarely cries. Not usually very emotional about trivial things. Arrived at the place, and I found suddenly that I wanted to go home. I wasn't interested in what we were doing, the accommodation sucked, etc. To my unending embarrassment, I started crying one day. And I could not stop. I remember being bewildered by my sudden onset of tears, and not being able to stop it. The one teacher was incredibly concerned. She was convinced something terrible had happened that I was keeping to myself. The stupid, lame reason was that I simply didn't want to be there. Somehow, years of not really crying hard at anything burst forth, and I cried periodically for 2 days. My mom called me, and something she said just made me stop. After that, I had fun. I'm still kind of stumped at what all that was about, and I cringe every time I remember it. On the ominous side, that incident was the last time I cried that I can remember. Even more embarrassingly, I was 15 when all that happened, not 10 as you might think. I'm 20 now. I shudder to think what random incident might prompt my next tier festival. I'd love to say this happened a while ago, but it didn't. It happened a year and a half ago. I was going to the gym, and I was on my period. I ran out of pads, so I decided to stuff my shorts with toilet paper as a last resort. No biggie, used to do it all the time. So I'm on the treadmill at the gym. The gym is fairly crowded, with a lunch break crowd. I'm on a machine that's in the front row. There were 3 rows of treadmills, doing a steady jog for about 45 minutes, then I'm ready to get off. So I turn off the machine, and turn around. Bloody toilet paper. All over the treadmill, all over the floor. Somehow, I didn't realize that my shorts were too loose and the toilet paper would fall out. No one told me. I haven't been back to that gym. And needless to say, I was never unprepared again. When I was 17 to 18ish, kind of socially handicapped when dealing with girls, only the ones I liked romantically anyway, I once went on a family day out which happened to end up at a Pancake restaurant. There was a girl my age who worked there as a waitress whom I noticed and really liked a lot. As this restaurant happened to be well over a half-hour drive away from where I lived and I had no means of transportation there without telling people why I wanted to go there so badly, I figured the best way to go there again was to arrange a day out with some friends at the swimming pool opposite the restaurant. Of course the day would end up at the restaurant again where I was going to make my move. Mind you, I did not think this through. Anyway, so at the end of the day at the swimming pool I suggested to go to the Pancake restaurant, but as my friends were having too much fun in the pool I didn't get anyone to go with me. I got one friend to come with me after telling him about my motives. So we went there, we ordered some pancakes and as we were eating them the girl I liked just walked in to start her shift. As I had no plan on how I would be dealing with this and got really scared shitless to talk to her, I figured the best way to show her that I liked her was to give her a tip, which is not customary where I live, as opposed to for instance in the US. So when we were ready to pay for our pancakes, the manager of the restaurant came to us with the bill. As this was the moment for my plan to come to fruition, I gave the manager a few euros extra and a note with my phone number and told her that it was for that girl I liked. She suggested I'd come along with her and give it to her in person. So in the end we went to this girl and the manager said, "Hi, name of girl, this young man has something he wants to tell you." I fucking froze with anxiety and give her the tip and the note with my phone number, barely saying a word. To top it all off, the manager then said something to her along the lines of, "I think he has a crush on you." She hesitantly accepted the tip and note and thanked me with a look of total disbelief on her face, not the good kind. There was an awkward silence for about 10 seconds until finally I walked off without saying anything, feeling utterly ashamed and regretted the whole plan. Needless to say, she never called me. When I was 7 years old, my friend and I were playing in his room. He had a 3-year-old little brother, and for some reason, we thought it would be funny for me to put my penis in his mouth. It was all a joke, we were just being silly, and had no idea what we were doing. So I take his little brother into the closet and stick my willy into his mouth. We're giggly about it and don't even realize what we're doing is wrong. After maybe 30 seconds, I hear his mother walk into the room. I can see her through the slats of the closet door. She says, "Where is Henry?" and irrationally honest? To which my friend replies, "Oh, he's got his willy in Henry's mouth, they're in the closet." She scrambles to the closet to find Henry on his knees while I'm zipping up my trousers. She panics, starts sobbing, and runs away with Henry. Later that day, my mom picks me up and is visibly shaken. She asks me tons of strange questions. Has anyone ever touched me? No. Has my brother ever made me touch him? No. Has my dad ever made me touch him? No. A week later, I went to a therapist. I continued to go to therapy until I was 18. Every week. My mom still won't ever address the topic. I never had any idea what I was doing, and thought it was all harmless fun. Didn't even know that a blowjob was a real thing that grown-ups did. I just thought it would be funny to put my dick in my friend's little brother's mouth. I guess you could say that the whole ordeal, and the reaction from my mom, scarred me for life. A year later, my friend moved overseas and I never saw him, or his brother, again. Mine's a twofer. I'd had a crush on this dude for a year, as long as I'd known him, and he finally asked me out, so we dated for a few months my senior year of HS. I was head over heels, and as a 16-17-year-old girl I did not understand why he wouldn't want to love me forever. I even drove 45 minutes to his house when we both had a 2-hour delay just to give him a blowjay and head back so I wasn't late for school. He broke up with me right before Christmas, But I'd already bought him a Christmas present, and so cringe moment number 1 was writing an 11-page missive about how much I wanted to be with him, and drove that and his Christmas present to his house and left it outside his house. I'm certain he thought I was going to do some psycho stalker shit based on all that, but I legitimately just wanted to share my feelings or whatever. Cringe moment number 2 with the same guy would be when he happened to show up at the gas station I worked at, still a senior in high school. This would have been sometime around March, I guess. I was still not over him, would have taken him back in a heartbeat. He was training with the local fire department. I think he was doing first responder training, but I don't really remember. At any rate, he didn't know I worked at the gas station, just stopped in for a drink. We ended up going out to his car, where he told me the real reason he dumped me was because he wasn't over his ex. I asked if he was now, and that's why he came to see me. He told me he had no idea I worked there, it was just a coincidence, so I cried. He told me I was still a cool person. So I blew him. I guess I thought that would win him back? Probably the most awkward blowy of his life, this crying ex of his that smelled like gasoline. I finished, or, rather he did, and then I thanked him. Was at the bar and got the sudden urge to take a shit. This was a beautiful spring Saturday, day drinking situation. Bar and patio were packed. One bathroom in the place. Single toilet type deal. I go in and seemingly lock the door. It was one of those cheap push locks, who fucking knows it if works or not. I do my business and begin to wipe. Immediately run out of toilet paper. Look around and see another roll across the bathroom. Pants on the floor, I'm waddling over to get the other roll and the door flies open and a guy walks in. I have a shit-covered wad of toilet paper in one hand, the other roll in the other. Cock out, pants on the floor. Dude, just cringes as if he's seen a dead body and backs out shutting the door. I finish up, return to my friends and never utter a word about it. Didn't see the dude anywhere as I'm sure he went home to cry. BC, that's exactly what I did. While living abroad in a non-English speaking country, my girlfriend heard about a church that had service in English. She was curious about it and she wanted to be in an all-English speaking setting for a change, so she asked me to come with her. The church was packed. I even recognized a couple other foreigners from afar that I had seen at parties. At one point, about 2/3 into the service, the priest asked all newcomers to please stand up and introduce themselves. Before I could even start to get up, my GF sunk her nails in my leg and held me down. Apparently she hates unexpected spotlight moments, so I remained seated. A few other newcomers stood up scattered around the pews, like 10 in all. Then the priest said, anyone else new? My GF was all like deer in headlights.jpg and I was all like dude let's stand up.pdf. The priest again said, I think there's 2 more new people here, no? At this point people were looking around, some had zeroed in on us already but were uncertain. The few people we had seen around town before were totally onto us. There was no possible way for us to gracefully stand up and introduce ourselves at this point. Nevertheless, the priest called out at least 3 more times, 5 in total, before he gave up and moved on. Although the priest never looked at directly, the whole crowd was now looking at us, disconcerted. I'm pretty extroverted and have no fear of speaking in front of a crowd. So, faking not wanting to get up, in solidarity for my GF stage fright, was specially awkward. As soon as the service ended we bolted out of the church before anyone else exited and never looked back. This happened 8 years ago, we're married now. We don't speak of it. So me and 2 acquaintances, around 18 to 20 years old, are heading home to our rural-ish home near Carlisle, southern Illinois. We had spent some time running around in the Belleville suburbs of St. Louis on the Illinois side of the river. It was getting close to midnight. Coming through Lebanon, Illinois, we get pulled over, but this was no ordinary traffic stop. The tone was clear from the beginning that this was going to be a bad night. The police sergeant, Jeff Crystal, I believe his name was, immediately started asking about drugs. We told him we had no drugs. He pried and demanded to search the vehicle. The driver had a dependency with his license, I think it was expired, and the search began against or refusal. Another police car showed up and things went downhill. They searched like crazy, even tearing up some of the car. Of course, we had no drugs. This infuriated the sergeant, who was psychotically upset that there was not drugs. He handcuffed the driver and put him in the back seat of his police car. And began barking at the 3 of us for drugs. My other acquaintance, not the driver, had a head injury just a year or 2 ago, was in a coma for like 9 months, and had to relearn to walk, eat, and who he was, etc. The enraged psychotic sergeant was screaming like a madman and began attacking the head injury acquaintance. By now there were 2 assisting officers in addition to the sergeant. One officer held the head injury man against the hood of the cop car while the sergeant screamed at him and attacked him. He was attacking him from behind while he was bent over the hood. An unaware person would think this was some sort of sexual attack, but I knew better. The sergeant was kneeing him in the balls from behind. One officer was holding him down, the sergeant was attacking him, and the third officer had a gun pointed at my head. I was at the back of our vehicle, the driver was handcuffed behind his back in the back seat of the sergeant's police vehicle. This escalate attack on head injury acquaintance escalated to the sergeant banging his head off the police car's hood. Despite having a gun at my head, I am screaming at them that he has a head injury and that they are going to kill him, along with the driver trying to yell the same from the cop car. They did not let up for several more minutes. Then the sergeant went, alone, straight to the back seat of his cop car where the driver handcuffed behind his back. He began to attack the cuffed driver. I was straight in front of his cop car, standing at the back of our vehicle, still with a gun on my head screaming for him to stop. The man with the gun at my head made it clear I was not going to move. The attack continued, giving me a clear view between the two front seat of the cop car at this sergeant just laying into the cuffed driver. The sergeant looked straight at me, covered his right fist with his other hand and piled his elbow into the chest of the driver. Then he left the car and headed towards me. I was petrified. I thought it was my turn. He screamed in my face, spitting all over me, and I just stood there saying, "Yes sir, no sir," waiting for the beating to start. I still don't know why to this day, but it never did. Neither the sergeant or the other officers ever laid a hand on me. The incident was over and they allowed us to call our family to come pick us up, except the driver who was arrested for driving without a valid license. We thought they would find his dead body dumped in a field somewhere the next day, but there was nothing we could do except get the fuck out of there. The next day the driver was released. He was finally able to the hospital and x-rays confirmed a cracked sternum. A long drug-out civil lawsuit against the city of Lebanon, Illinois resulted. Only the driver was named in the lawsuit. I acted as a witness and made statements sealing his case. They eventually settled out of court for an undisclosed amount. The sergeant was apparently known for jacking people for drugs. I was harassed by the police daily, charged with many crimes I didn't commit, and even convicted of a couple since then. A few paid lawyers, thrown cases, doctored audio tapes, planted drugs, and 5 years of court proceedings later I was finally able to escape from the area. Bogus legal charges keep you trapped. After finally getting over all of the charges and any repercussions, court supervisions, probations over false convictions, I was strings free and got the fuck out of St. Clair Count and Clinton Count for good finally. I was able to start my life over free of police thug harassment supported by eager prosecutes looking for retribution. I never received a dime or pursued my own civil case and regret not doing so. The harassment cost me tens of thousands of dollars and a dozen stress-filled years of my life. I was finally able to go to college when I turned 30. I never got therapy and probably still should, as the thought of this gives me panic attacks, stress, prevents me from sleeping, and has just ruined me as a person. In 6th or 7th grade I went to 2 schools, one in the morning with advanced classes, and the regular public school in the afternoon. At the first school T here was an 8th grade girl who went there all day, named Priscilla. She was really pretty and incredibly popular. And for some reason, I got her a Valentine's Day present. It was a set of lotions and stuff from Bath & Body Works. The day of, I also frantically searched my room for a blue stuffed bear that I didn't really care for, so I could give her that too. I walked up to her, placed it on the floor in front of her, said Happy Valentine's Day, and walked away. All day I had guys coming up to me and congratulating me on having the balls to approach her. Apparently nobody else did, or ever did, because she was so popular and probably had a boyfriend. She never said anything to me, though, and I kind of forgot about it and apparently didn't give a single shit. I'm also gay, so, there's that. Didn't quite get that at the time. I'm not sure why it makes me greater than _ oh so hard. Probably just thinking about it from her perspective. I was fucking hideous in 6th grade, for one thing. And the bear probably smelled funny. On the other hand, I did attend the first dance the 6th graders were allowed to go to, and I was the only 6th grader actually dancing with an 8th grade girl from my bus stop. Yeah. So suck it, losers.